coming to you live from deep within, well, I guess it definitely qualifies as muddy and windy at this point. And also sometimes sunny, radioactive meme land. We are the survivors of the alt-right kekpocalypse. The few, the brave, the bitchy, once more wading into battle against the froggy hordes with Rantzerker. Public service announcement. Response to Laci. If you're listening to this after the live show and you want to hear the full stream, go to www.honeybadgerradio.com for our unabridged podcasts, or look up to the right of this video. There's a link in the video to go directly, in this video, to go directly to the unabridged version on YouTube. There is no paywall. You can go directly to it by linking or clicking the link that will be on the right of this video. I think it's the right. It's the right. It's the right, right? That's where the cards go?
It's on the upper right corner, yeah.
Yeah, at the upper right corner of this video will take you to the unabridged version. Just a note, our Australia fundraiser is still ongoing, and we are one day left to get Melbourne funded, and we have about $1,000 left to go. So every $5 counts at this point. We're in the last furlong of the race. So go to www.feedthebadger.com and put a few shekels in the hat so we can get to Melbourne. Wait. I say Melbourne wrong, don't I? It's not Melbourne.
It's Melbourne.
Melbourne.
Or Melbourne.
Melbourne.
Okay, well, anyway, that place, the place that I can't pronounce. We want to go there, so give us money to do so. www.feedthebadger.com. All right. I don't think we're going to gamify this stream. Sorry, guys.
Gamify?
Yeah, well, essentially we allow them to give us money and then we go longer.
Oh, yeah, no. God, no.
Nope. We don't always do that.
There's no need, really.
No.
Well, not just that. Like, I got shit to do. So, y'all can just fucking, if you want to gamify it and stick around longer, but,
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, let's get started.
Okay.
All right.
Let's do this.
It has been 14 days. I knew that video was going to make some waves.
Woo!
But I gotta say, what? It's so funny and, stark to me how differently people respond in my real life versus online. Like, in my real life, my friends...
Okay. Just... People are going to respond differently in real life versus online because in real life, people know you.
And
right?
you can also hit them.
Well, no.
But you shouldn't.
Not just that,
but
they
it's always
know
a possibility,
No, but the people in Laci's real life know her. They have a history with her. They will, they're friends with her for a reason, and it's probably because they believe she's well-intentioned and all of this stuff, right? Whereas the people online, not so much, right? And so the people in her real life are gonna give her a certain amount of benefit of the doubt that people online won't. That's just normal. It's just perfectly
Yeah.
normal.
Also, I think sometimes strangers, while, they are unfiltered, sometimes they can be more honest with you than people in your real life that are thinking about, perhaps they don't want to make you uncomfortable, or they don't want to, they're afraid of confrontation or whatever.
Or they don't want fallout, right?
Yeah.
They don't want to lose you as a friend, so they're gonna be, they're gonna try and smooth over any potential conflicts, even if they disagree with you. They're gonna try to, I will kill you, dogs. Fuck off. Oh my god. Okay.
Yep.
Thankfully,
on.
on this channel, we're pretty honest. Nobody gives a shit. Nobody gives a shit about each other's feelings. I think. I don't know.
I don't.
Yeah.
Moving on? Is that a yes?
Go. Move on.
Okay,
Yes,
okay.
it's a yes.
Supportive, shots of whiskey, a little caution, a few questions, but overall, good talk. But online, fucking dumpster fire. I'm gonna need more whiskey for this. By far the biggest question y'all have been asking me is why? Why am I doing this? What are my motives? There's been a lot of accusations that I feel are unfair and assumptions that I feel are unfair, but I will live with it. On the anti side, I've read some very elaborate
I think we can, she's talking, the first part was about the feminist side. She's saying
Well-
that there was assumptions that she felt were unfair.
No, she's saying on both sides, right? Assumptions and accusations and stuff like that. I think she's essentially saying, like there are people on both sides questioning her motives. And that's totally understandable. I think that it comes from different places. That kind of speculation. I think that, a lot of the accusations are probably more speculations. What could her possible motivations be? Well, it's possible that she's motivated by money, or like by she sees that the feminist gravy train is drying up. And so maybe she's, maybe she's being motivated by, a desire to maintain a sense of relevance, and she can't do that within feminism. So she's opening herself up to this new stuff, right? Those would be, I've seen a lot of speculation on that. I haven't seen a whole lot of people saying flat out that that's, this is obvious that this is what she's doing or why she's doing it. But I have seen people speculating about that. And so, but I do think that feminists often equate the two, speculation versus accusation, and they also just the way they equate, I hope you get raped, they consider that to be a threat rather than just wishful thinking or whatever, right? Like
or trolling.
they draw an equivalence between I hope you get raped and I'm coming to rape you. So yeah, I think she's drawing equivalencies where I don't think that blanket accusations are as common on the anti-feminist side, at least not from what I've seen from most of the people who are the most prominent. I have not seen blanket accusations. Here's what she's doing, right? I've seen it a lot of, why is she doing this? Maybe it's this, right? So.
Okay, well, let's. It sounds like she's getting it from both sides. So, let's continue.
Very elaborate conspiracy theories about betrayal and greed, sex, and from the feminist side, I have seen a similar tone deafness. Like you guys may have seen some of the things that people posted after that video. I've spent an upwards of 40 hours the last 2 weeks talking to YouTubers on the phone, talking to people on Skype. Just having so many conversations about this, and it has gotten to the point where I'm just sort of going round and round and round, trying to explain why I see value in talking to people who are hostile to feminism. If people don't get that at this point, I feel like, I can't do anything more. Some of the background, the personal background, that has brought me here to this point. It has been such a tremendous amount of shit. And I feel like a lot of people don't understand that. And it makes sense, because I haven't really talked about that. It's really hard for me to talk about. Like, I'm gonna be honest with you guys. Stuff is personal, it's vulnerable. I need to just be open, so please be decent.
I'm just pausing it for the banana, so somebody else should probably say something.
Okay, well,
The internet is never decent. The internet is not going to be nice to you. It's just not. But I like that she's given up trying to explain why she's doing this. I presume to feminists, because anti-feminists, I doubt, are going to be like, oh my god, why are you talking to us? Well, they're going to be like, oh my god, you want the money, you want the dick, you want, I don't know, the whiskey, the hookers and blow that the anti-feminist side promises you. But I think that it's probably the feminists who are really saying, why are you doing this?
Well, anti-feminists are saying, a lot of anti-feminists are saying, yes, talk to her, but be cautious and be aware that her motivations and her intentions may not be 100% what she says they are, right? Whereas the feminist side of things is, oh my God, I can't believe you would talk to those people, right? I can't believe you would give them a platform. I can't believe you would, that is just disgusting and it's a betrayal, right? So it's a completely different thing. Like, I have not heard a single prominent anti-feminist say, no, we shouldn't talk to her. I have heard them say, yes, we need to talk to her and red pill her, but good, right? And stuff like that. But to be cautious, to be aware that she may not have, 100% sparkling innocent intentions in this, right? But I haven't heard anybody saying, yeah, we shouldn't talk to her.
Well, it's two different types of why, right?
Yeah.
The feminist version is why you shouldn't be doing this at all.
Yeah.
The version on the anti side is, okay, well, what are your motives for? No, you can do it and we'll talk to you, but what are your motives here? And my personal opinion is, it doesn't matter what her motives are. She doesn't gain, like, I cannot conceive of what she could possibly gain by doing this.
Well, I can't conceive of any possible way that she could sort of hijack the anti-feminist community.
Well, actually,
unless she was good and red-pilled, like unless she actually did an about-face sort of like Cassie J. Cassie J has charmed the anti-feminist community, right? And what did she have to do? What did she have to do that? She had to put out that documentary that was fair and sympathetic. She had to essentially end the documentary with, I no longer call myself a feminist. She went on to defend her position in the face of all kinds of opposition from feminists, right? And she eventually came out with the beautiful, beautiful quote that it wasn't learning about men's issues that made me part ways with feminism. It was learning about feminism that made me leave feminism. Mm-hmm. Right. And so essentially that is why she has been embraced. But when she was doing her Kickstarter, there were the exact same conversations going on. Do we trust her? What are her motivations? What should we fund this project when we don't actually know whether it's going to be not just sympathetic, but whether it's even going to be fair or whether it's just going to be another hit piece? We don't know. Right. And so essentially, Laci is going to have to deal with all of those questions from the anti-side. But at the same time, none of the MRAs out there, even the ones who were saying don't fund Cassie's documentary because we don't know what her intentions are, they weren't saying she shouldn't be allowed to put that out. She shouldn't be allowed to make that film. Right. So, and very, very few people, as far as I know, declined an invitation to talk with her that she requested to interview from the MRA side. Lots of feminists did, but I don't know of any MRA who just said, yeah, no, I'm not going to talk to you.
Well, and you've got to draw a distinction between men's rights activists and advocates and men's issues enthusiasts and whatever the hell you want to call our particular
and anti-feminists in general.
And anti-feminists. Because, you say that Laci couldn't hijack the anti-feminist agenda. However, I'm not so sure if that's true about anti-feminism that's purely anti-feminism and somewhat superficial.
Yeah, like anti-feminism that believes that feminism was needed at one point in the past or in other parts of the world, and they're just critical of it because of the sort of crazy, sexist air conditioning brand of feminism that they're often criticizing. But they still want it validated in some other way.
The whole idea that feminism used to be this noble movement for equality, and it only just got hijacked by crazies recently, right? Which is the position that Christina Hoff Sommers takes, and it's the position that Milo Yiannopoulos takes, and it's the position that a lot of people who would be considered to be anti-feminists have taken. And,
which is interesting, because if you actually think about it logically, they're basically saying that everywhere that feminism wasn't is a hellhole for women. So I don't know how they can really call themselves anti-feminist in that sense. But that be it what it may, they actually the entirety of their opposition or their criticism of feminism seems to lie, as you said, Karen, with the crazies and with the extremism that we're seeing now. And you probably would have seen throughout all of feminism, but they don't seem to recognize that.
Well, honestly, because they weren't there during the suffragette movement, and they weren't there during, necessarily during the height of the second wave, right? When the lesbian separatism thing and this Red Stocking Manifesto and all of those things were going on, and Dworkin and McKinnon were testifying before a congressional committee and all of those things, right? They weren't there. And they didn't see it. And those little bits of history if they're taught at all, are only taught in women's studies courses, right? And they're taught from the angle that those were noble and correct and wonderful and necessary actions, and very justifiable and backed up with evidence and all kinds of other bullshit, right? And so if you're going to learn about those things as a person, you're learning them in essentially a madrasa, a feminist madrasa of a women's studies course. You're not learning about the ignoble history of the feminist movement, the terrorism and the inequalities that early first wave feminists perpetuated and supported, or the blanket man-hating of the second wave. And if you are learning about them, you're learning that those were necessary positions to take, right? And so, oh my God, dog, fuck off. And so essentially, I think that what this whole thing with I'm not against feminism in general, just against third wave feminism, is a lack of actual understanding of the history of the feminist movement right back to the beginning. So,
Yeah, well,
Or even just what the central tenets of feminism are, no matter what wave it is, which is already starting from a falsehood, right? Just what the center of it is. So no matter how extreme or reasonable it might look, it works from a presumption that is based on falsehood.
Yeah, no, I've used the germ theory versus the four humors theories of disease to describe what I think is going on. When you base, you may think that you're doing, really good work based on your four humors theory of disease. You're curing people, you're healing people, right? But that's not necessarily going to be what plays out on the ground, because you have a faulty understanding of the mechanisms of disease when you embrace that entire sort of model of how disease operates, right? And that I think is the fundamental question, right? That no feminists really want to ask or have answered is not so much the is it, like these sort of, is it right that women got the vote, right? Or, do women deserve the vote? That's a question like, is transubstantiation, right, really the body and blood of Christ, or is it just a metaphor, right? Those are minor nitpicks, essentially, in the grand scheme of the worldview, right? But at the same time, they don't want to ask the question, was Christ the Son of God? And for that matter, does God actually exist? They don't want to ask those questions, because those would make the entire question of transubstantiation moot, right?
Okay, so what I'm hearing
Sorry,
is
I was
that
muted.
If what I'm hearing is, can you guys hear me? Or are
Yeah.
you just talking over me? What I was hearing is that the fundamental question, what are the fundamental question do you think that feminists don't really want to talk about, Karen?
Is the oppression of women historically by a system constructed by men and set up to privilege men. Is that actually what society looked like back then, right? That men constructed the system for men's benefit and at the expense of the oppression of women.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so that is the main tenet, and what falls out of that is women always have it worse, always.
Mm-hmm. Yes, Danny Duchamp. Anybody who's not subscribed to him should probably do that. But he just put out a video not long ago that goes into this in absolute detail, asking that fundamental question, right? And essentially looking all the way back, not just all the way to the first wave, but to pre-feminism, to Charles Fourier, to, the idea of feminism as a society can be judged via the degree to which it privileges women.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think I did something on that too in the Unnamed
Yes,
Women
yes,
series.
no, yeah, absolutely. And he probably learned a lot of what he put in that video, which was a very good video. It was a half-hour video of him sitting in his shitty Honda Fit, drinking from, I think, Jack Daniel's bottle, in a parkade, not driving. But essentially, I think that he learned a lot of what he put into that video from us. And particularly in terms of Fourier and all of that from you. And it's, he really, but the way he laid it out was just very, very, very good in terms of, you know, because the video was basically, but I object to third wave feminism because it's so crazy. Well, you know, but the second wave and the first waves were just, right? And then he goes back to the second wave and he shows how, yeah, no, that's not necessarily the case. And, you know, and then he goes back to the first wave, and then he goes back to before the first wave, right? And essentially lays out the argument that, yeah, no, it's never been interested in equality. It's always been about privileging women. And it's never really given any reasonable look at men's issues, at their obligations, at their responsibilities, at the ways in which sexism has affected men. It's never given any of that any kind of consideration when it has essentially declared, you know, as a matter of course that women are oppressed and men are privileged. So.
Yeah, it's essentially the premise of Charles Fourier is that a society be judged morally in its moral progress based on the situation that women occupy. So that was the foundational premise of feminism. And if you look at what actually happened throughout the history of feminism, it really hasn't deviated from that foundational premise that society be judged morally by how women are treated, as opposed to how everyone is treated.
Yes, as opposed or how women are treated relative to any other group.
Mm-hmm.
It's always been just like a blanket, you know, how women are treated, and this is why you see this fucking bullshit with the, you know, posters saying 80% of the people in refugee camps are women and girls, and it's like nobody's bothered asking, well, what happened to the men and boys? Oh wait, they're dead. Right? Or they've been forcibly conscripted as child soldiers, or they are back home defending the village so that the women and the girls have a home to come back to, right? Risking their lives, or they're, you know, they died along the way defending those women and children on their way to the refugee camps, right? You know, it doesn't look at any of that. It doesn't consider any of that. It just says women are disadvantaged because of the majority of people who are displaced in war. Right? And it's like, really, like this is like, it didn't even behoove you to ask, okay, so if 80% of these people are women and girls, where are all the boys and men? Where are they?
Well, and with the anti-feminist community, I think the majority of their criticism essentially lies in the alleged extremism of feminism at the moment. But if you think about it, at some point, a society that judges itself based on how women are benefited and to the exclusion of men, so you don't look at the situation for men, is going to end up sort of scraping the bottom of the barrel of issues that it has to resolve in favor of women. I mean, if you're going to say that all moral progress is measured by the situation that women are in and improving the situation that women are in, eventually you are going to end up with sexist air conditioning and man spreading, because you're going to run out of things.
Yeah.
You're going to be scraping that barrel.
150 years of improving the situation for women while completely ignoring the situation for men would definitely result in women only really being able to complain about first world problems.
And who knows, you know, in 20 years, and this is how potentially, I guess, the anti-feminist position could be hijacked by Laci, because the entirety of their argument is constituted with, oh, well, those are extremists. If there weren't, then they would have no anti-feminist arguments. But and that's how she would hijack them she essentially says, okay, there are extremists in the feminist camp, there are extremists in the alternate camp. Well, if you say, well, okay, let's forgive everyone they're extremists and just talk turkey, let's talk issues, let's talk philosophies, let's talk marginalization, let's talk creating an entire philosophical system that bases its moral premise on benefiting one group to the exclusion of every other. Let's talk about that. Anti-feminists can't. They're just stuck in the, look at the extremists. Look at the extremists. Ha ha ha. Look at the extremists. Once you take that away, once you take that off of the discussion, they have nothing left.
Well, they probably concede everything after that. They probably say, well, then, yeah.
Everything after that.
Yeah.
They would not see that, maybe you can concede manspreading and mansplaining and sexist air conditioning, but in 20 years, most likely there will be anti-feminists who say, oh yeah, they're right, manspreading really did oppress women. But you know this thing called man-cellular division? This new thing is a little extreme. I don't think that men's cells divide in order to oppress women. And then 20 years after that, it'll be like, oh yeah, man-cellular division, that was a thing. That really did oppress women. But this whole idea that there's a Y chromosome in animals around the world, that doesn't oppress women. And then 20 years after that, of course, all of the male animals with their Y chromosomes oppress women, and that's why we had to get rid of them. But I don't know. I don't think the fact that men existed 200 years ago before we exterminated, I don't think that means that women are oppressed now, and that explains why we have to kill all of the more masculine women. And then 20 years after that, they'll be like, oh yes, the purging of the masculine women, totally justified. But do we really need to purge the more gender-neutral women?
Okay.
I mean, is that not extremist? And then it goes on and on.
Yeah.
What am I...
No,
Okay.
we got it. After like the second version, we got it. We're about a minute and 46 seconds in.
All right, let's go.
Okay.
Let's go.
Internet. In a word, I've seen some shit.
That's like 4 words.
I'll start with the feminist side of things. For a while, some of the more fringy aspects of feminism that can be found online have given me pause. I started my channel to share sexuality information, to talk about sexual politics and so on, but over time, just talking about that became harder and harder. It's gotten to the point where, the simplest topics in sex ed, the simplest language even, like male and female, they incite outrage in some people. I did and will continue to do my best to, accommodate people's needs and requests and to respect the feminist conversation, except when it doesn't make any sense. Being anti-science, part of this. Antis would be fair to say, well, you know what, this is where you went wrong, you pandering asshole. But I don't see this as pandering. To me, this kind of stuff, being sensitive and considerate, is just like a good thing to do. And I try to do it to the best that I can, but it got to this point where, at one point I'm listening to like 1 million different people's feelings on this stuff. It got unhealthy, okay? Like, I was obsessing over every word that came out of my mouth, every way I could be misconstrued or accidentally cause harm. And
This is it really, like, anti-feminists really are giving her good advice in terms of speak your truth and fuck anybody who gets offended. And that really is good advice.
Yeah.
In terms of, because you're never, she has this idea that there is some way to please everybody, to be sensitive enough and considerate enough that nobody will be mad at her. And that's just not ever going to happen.
Yep. And you know what? You also work from the assumption that by trying to be considerate of other people's feelings and trying to be gentle and all that you're actually doing more good for them than if you were just telling the truth. If you were just being honest. And being honest and staying with the facts is actually better, even if it doesn't appear to be overall, because it's what people need to hear sometimes.
It's kind of like Jonathan Haidt said with the trigger warnings and all of those things, right? That, he was sitting on a panel and there was, oh my God, dog, stop it. He was sitting on a panel with this feminist student, and she said that trigger warnings are good because, it helps students who've been traumatized. And he said, well, actually, here's the thing, right? No psychologist would ever agree with that. right? Because when you have been traumatized, when you've experienced trauma and you are having difficulties, right, they will tell you that avoidance is the worst possible thing you can do, and that exposure is what you need, okay? And then she comes back and says, well, classrooms aren't therapy sessions and they shouldn't be treated as therapy sessions. But she literally was using this sort of, we need to essentially pander to the traumas of students in order to provide them a healthy psychological, and essentially I want to turn the class into my version of a therapy session. And he's saying, well, actually, that's actually harmful. And then she says, well, but the classroom isn't supposed to be a therapy session. And it's just like, what the, no. People need to be exposed to different ideas. They need to actually, their amygdala's fucking rot if they aren't exposed to unpleasant things, right? And the more your amygdala atrophies, the more you're protected, the less unpleasantness you experience, the less it takes to trigger a full psychotic break. Right? So is this really what we want for society in general? To just constantly paint ourselves and our society members, our fellow members of society, into smaller and smaller corners of what they are psychologically capable of hearing without going, "Ree!" Is that what we want?
Completely helpless people. Yeah, I think that's probably what the ruling body does want. You know,
shall we?
Just like they want a docile bunch of cattle.
Okay, so I had to adjust the volume. Scott told me that it's a little bit low. I don't know what else I can do. I have it raised all the way up now. My computer's volume was a little bit below, so I raised it up. So we'll see if it sounds better. But everything is maxed out now. So if it's not loud enough, I don't know what to tell you.
And even then, there have always been people who seem determined to misconstrue what I say no matter what. People
Yes, because that is another form of bullying that often gets ignored that I just got to comment on. You know, when people are... people can be brutally honest on the internet. In fact, I think most people are invited to be brutally honest on the internet because while on one hand, essentially there is no consequences for it. Now, that's not me like shaming them for it, but I think that in a social setting, in public, with people that you know, people are more likely to self-censor or at least smooth over what they're thinking, as to what Karen was pointing out before. However, when you're on the internet, you're more likely to be very blunt and brutally honest, you know? So I understand that there are people who would basically look at brutal honesty, which sometimes borders on insulting, and sometimes it just outright is insulting, like they're trying to insult you, and they will call that bullying, and they will say that that's mean, and we shouldn't do those things. However, I think there's another side to bullying that is often ignored and not pointed out, and that is when people essentially exercise a state of constantly being hurt by whatever it is that you say, to the point where they're controlling your language, and you have to always be walking on eggshells on the internet or around other people, and you can't say what you're thinking. You have to constantly think about it because somebody somewhere might whine and cry about it. And I think that's another kind of bullying that people don't acknowledge as bullying, because you basically make yourself into a victim, and the person that's saying something has to feel bad about it, and everyone around them points at that person and says, you're a bad person because you did this to this person over here. And this is why I stay with the idea that, you know, offense is never given, it's always taken. Even when someone's trying to insult you, it's up to you to whether or not it actually, you know, keeps you up at night. And I think that people can resist and grow a backbone anyway.
I would actually say, too, that, you know, like what my mother always told me was consider the source. And what I told somebody at the men's conference in Ottawa recently, last fall, I believe, during the Q&A, that, you know, he says, how do you weather the negative comments? And I said, well, I just essentially picture a kid with Down syndrome screaming at me that I'm retarded, right? Like that's, you know, if they don't have an argument and their only argument is you're a bad person, then I have every right to envision them as a kid with Down syndrome pointing at me and screaming that I'm retarded, right? You know, counter my points, like freaking argue the point, and stop being moralizing, because that is, and stop arguing this whole idea of perpetrating harm, right? I mean, she literally said in her previous video, Laci, that, you know, one of the reasons why Hypatia, that journal, essentially they retracted the article on transracialism, and one of the reasons they used was because it was perpetrating harm, right? It could harm people, right? And it's like, that should be immaterial. It should be immaterial whether the truth, right, or accurate facts or whatever could result in harm, because every single truth can result in harm. Every single fucking thing you do can result in harm.
Right.
You're too nice to somebody, you can be harming them. You're too mean to them, you can be harming them. Right? You're completely neutral to them. They could feel harmed by the fact that you're ignoring them. Right? Like, harm's everywhere.
Yeah.
And speaking of harm being everywhere, I'd like to remind everyone that we're still doing our fundraiser to get to Australia.
Oh yeah,
Melbourne
if
this
you
time.
want us to be able to perpetrate some real freaking good harm.
No, I was actually thinking more of the harm that could be perpetrated against us by the various things in the Australian
Australia.
ecosystem, including
Yeah.
the tree.
Poisonous animals like platypi, these
The
deadly
tree,
little
but
jellyfish,
The tree that,
and feminists.
you know, exactly, feminists. Anyway.
Yeah, the drop bears. I mean, the drop feminists.
All right, let's
The ones
go.
that when you're walking under the tree, they drop on you and start eating your head.
Exaggerating, spreading lies and rumors. I watch these same people go on campaigns to try to get people fired or rejected from their community for relatively minor infractions. Like, this is disturbing to me. To many people that I've talked to on the anti-side, they have stories like this. And anybody who is interested in social justice and, you know, communication and how we have these conversations, this should, you know, be a flag for some deeper inspection, you know, closer probing into what's going on here. Because in my book, this is not feminism. This is bullying. And on a few occasions, it has made me scared for my physical safety. There was this one time
Okay,
I was
can you
at
stop for a sec?
conference-
This is not feminism. Well, unfortunately, when you create a system that's predicated on benefiting one group over another, or saying, okay, society is going to be judged by how this one group is treated, to the exclusion of every other group, it sort of ends up that a lot of bullying tends to be involved, because there's certain systems that characterizes, and those systems tend to require a certain amount of violence to perpetuate themselves. It doesn't have to be physical violence, it can also be social violence, ostracization, getting people fired, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But if you want to create a system in which one group, the situation for that group is the only thing that you judge the progress of society by, eventually you're going to have to find that in order to keep it that way, you have to do a lot of lying and bullying. All right. That's all I had to say.
You know, I'm walking out to the parking lot, and these three people, feminists, shout me down. They accuse me of contributing to the violent deaths of trans people. What's their reasoning? Well, when I was 17, I made a fan video for Chris Crocker. He uses the T word to describe himself, and I
That's
did not
tranny.
know that was offensive. And I apologized afterward. But, you know, 5 years later, there we were in this parking lot. Not only did they, you know, seem to imply that accidentally using an offensive word is the same as literally killing people, but then they threatened me. They threatened to kick my cis ass. Now, I've seen this shit online, but that was the first time I ever saw it in person. Wow.
Yeah, you know, and here's the thing too, right, is the narrative among feminists is that it's MRAs and anti-feminists who are putting feminists under actual threat, right? But this example is, you know, illustrative of you know, other feminists, other SJWs physically face to face threatening somebody with violence, right? And it's like for stepping a little bit out of line at age 17, and doing it by essentially accident. That's like, it really is like the less traction that these people have in the mainstream, the more interested they seem to be in the ideological purity of their members and policing their members and bullying those who step a little bit out of line and all of that. And, you know, and this is, yeah.
The only thing that, oh, you know what? There was something I took away from this. Oh, I know. Laci is trying to, she's basically telling a story about how once she said an offensive word and these people were offended and they threatened to kick her ass for it. The thing that I want to put out there is that these...
Well, five years later after she had apologized,
5 years
taken
later,
the video down.
Yeah, took the video down, apologized for it, still under threat. And the reason, what I was going to say is that these people that did this, and there are people like this all over, they are not actually so much offended at what you said. They are just extremely angry, and they probably have a lot of hatred in them from that. And when you make a system, or when you set up a philosophy that creates essentially a hierarchy of people based on their privilege, you are also making a stack, the progressive stack, in which there are some people where it's not only okay to hate them, you're actually encouraged to hate them because they're not in the their class is at a certain level. And Laci, unfortunately, as a white cisgendered woman, your women card is only good for so much, but all the other stuff is actually the reason why they hate you. I think that she's genuinely hated by some feminists because of the introduction of intersectionality. Otherwise, something that happened 5 years ago could not be attributed to the deaths of trans people throughout history.
It's fucking retarded.
It is.
As well, like the idea of using the word tranny is
it's like you're
responsible
basically
for that.
You're basically reaping what you sow with the system that you actually signed off on, and you said yes, the progressive stack. I got that.
And you know, honestly, Laci, if you had essentially responded to that furor, right, when you were 17 or whatever, you know, or later when it was drawn, your attention was directed to it, that you had used this offensive word, right? If you'd said, oh, well, yeah, so did Chris Crocker, so, like, fucking, so what?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Why don't you get on his case, since it was the video about him that I was doing, right? Or her, I don't fucking know. But why don't you freaking pile on Chris Crocker, right? He's run out of Britney Spears to cry about. So why don't you give him something else to like upload a video of mascara running freaking hysteria about? If you just said, yeah, I'm not going to apologize for that, right?
Yep.
I might choose in the future to not use that word, but I'm not going to apologize for it, right? Because I don't think I did anything wrong. You probably would not have had these people accosting you in a parking lot.
Yep.
Well, I mean, if she was in that situation, she probably wouldn't be in the particular convention where they were in the first place.
Mm-hmm. That's probably true. Shall we?
But Can I speak?
No. Go ahead.
Well, what I was going to say, what I was going to point out is when you create a moral hierarchy in which you, instead of looking at people's behaviors to determine how you're going to treat them, you look at features of their being. You're going to create, like, that's basically apartheid. It's just that you've created an apartheid that's sort of a weird reversed apartheid, and it's neither is ethical. They're all going to end up with that kind of situation where somebody's cornered in a parking lot and is afraid for their life. Okay, let's continue now.
Okay.
Other stories like this. Like, it pains me. I've seen a spectrum of these types of behaviors. To those of you who've been asking, does this mean you're not a feminist anymore? I will always be a feminist. I believe in social justice. I believe in the issues that I've talked about and the causes that I've campaigned for. That is why I'm here. It's because...
I just want to say that if she says, I will always be a feminist, and I believe in social justice and all these causes and everything, there might be people who would say, well, it doesn't seem like this whole idea of us having conversations with the anti-SJW side or whatever is worth it because it's not going to change Laci Green's mind.
You want a response to that? Because I can say this. Is she saying this for her audience or is she saying this for herself?
Oh, I think she's actually saying it for herself. But then look at Cassie J's 2-year freaking odyssey, right? And how she felt like feminism was like a bungee cord pulling her back in, and that she actually, initially, when she first began hearing the arguments and the statistics and all of these things, that she felt more strong in her feminism. She felt like it was even a more intrinsic part of her, and she was more committed to it, and that essentially there was the more she began to doubt or began to like seriously entertain the arguments of men's activists, right, the more resistant she became to them because of it's just a natural human impulse in terms of when you have a deeply held belief system and you start to experience doubt, you have an instinct to, oh my fucking God, I'm going to kill you dogs.
To reinforce
it, and then also to proselytize it more.
Mm-hmm.
So
if you can convince other people of it, then you can convince yourself almost.
Yes. Oh my God, I'm gonna.
Okay, just mute, Karen.
Oh my God.
Dog. All right. No, and what I wanted to add to that is it was a 2-year odyssey for Cassie, and I know that this has been 2 months for Laci. The other thing is that, for my personal opinion, is I just let people have their beliefs, as long as they're not actively harming people with them. I'm sorry about that. We're having a hailstorm here suddenly.
It's all right. I can barely hear it.
Actually cut out. You can barely hear it. All right. Well, just let them have their beliefs. And the thing is that I refuse to change I hold positions that a lot of people would find very, very controversial. And I feel like I should have the right to do that. And you know what? Laci can be a feminist. She can have those beliefs. We can continue to criticize her behavior and her conclusions and what she's advocating for. And we can hope that maybe she moves away from those behaviors and beliefs. But I just want to take her for whatever she's presenting now, as opposed to hanging an albatross around. I'm sorry, this hail is like really distracting. Okay. Brian, let's just keep going.
All right. Well, the last thing I was going to say is that Laci Green, it's going to take some time for her to, internalize the arguments. Hopefully she goes to people that make good arguments on the opposing side, and she doesn't just, go talk to people who are anti-feminist just because of the reasons we talked about earlier, which is like, I just don't like the extremists or whatever, because that's not really going to help. She's got to talk to people who actually have really good cases to make against feminism in general, and also have a plan to replace it with something else. And even then, I think that ultimately it doesn't matter if we change Laci Green's mind or not. What matters is that the people, the 1.5 million people that she follows, are also paying attention. It's also important that we do it just on principle to say we are willing to engage with people who have opposing views and have the discussion. So what's going on? What's wrong?
Just repeat your last sentence because it kind of wonked out.
Well, I'm sure the people watching heard me, but I was just saying that it's important that we can say we were willing to engage in discourse and discussion with people whom we are opposed to ideologically. Well,
the other thing is,
yeah,
if we maintain our belief system, and this is what I've noticed, people, if you just be like, you know what, I believe what I believe, This is what I've come to. These are the conclusions I've come to logically. You can flail about. You can dance around like a cat on a hot tin roof. You can do all. You can flip the frick out. But I'm going to still continue to be here in where I believe I'm the logical position, maintaining this position with zero effort. What I've noticed is that people exhaust themselves. Mm-hmm. And then when they're in a state of exhaustion and they can't keep fighting the conclusion, they suddenly come out, like, I don't know, a couple months later and say, with your conclusion, and say, hey, I realize that, this is my thought. This is my conclusion now.
Yeah.
Just exhaust Laci.
Yep.
Anyway.
Let's keep going.
Because I know who I am and what I stand for. And I know that this kind of shit isn't it. In the background of all of this for me was the antis. Now, I mentioned in my last video that the conversation's a little bit hostile. And when I say hostile, I'm not referring to people being offensive or taking the piss. Based on some of the reactions and questions that I've gotten from the anti-side, a lot of people don't seem to understand that I experienced that side of the conversation in the context of pretty intense harassment. And anytime I've so much as hinted about this to this crowd, to let them know, like, hey, I want to talk to you, but like, look what's going on. People have slammed me and accused me of playing the victim and trying to garner sympathy, being manipulative and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, at what point do I get to be a human being who...
What? No, that doesn't have anything to do with that. But I think that reminds me of... It reminds me of something that happened with Liana Kersner. So I'm going to bring up Liana K for a second. We asked Liana K if she wanted to come on for a fireside chat sometime. And Liana K, who fancies herself a moderate, smart, good feminist, like one of the good ones, said that she would not come on our show unless Karen officially gave her an apology for the way that Karen addressed her when Liana Kersner made a video talking about the Calgary Expo shortly after we were evicted. And when Liana K made... So, you don't know that? Well, let me tell the story. All right, so we get kicked out of Calgary Expo, and there is a lot of people talking about it online, most of whom, unless they spoke to us directly, did not know what the fuck was going on. Liana K, with no information, had no idea what had happened, and the only thing she had to go on was what the Mary Sue and like whatever various outlets had to say about it, which, as we all know, was bullshit, mostly. She makes a video speculating on it, claiming that the reason why she did was because her fans demanded or they requested it. Now, I'm not saying that that's not actually what happened, although she still ultimately had a choice as to whether or not she was going to make the video. But she did. And so she showed up on the video with a glittery bra, I'm not joking, where she used her own titties to like distract people from rage as she speculated without much information as to what happened at the Calgary Expo. Then Karen made a long comment, essentially calling her a moron. Because she didn't know she was talking about.
Is that comment still there?
It probably is. I don't know. I haven't looked.
I don't know if she might have deleted it.
It offended her a lot. Okay? But I had no idea. I remember seeing the comment, but I don't remember her responses. And then, this is like a year later, or more. And I said, Liana K, would you like to come on Honey Badger Radio sometime for a fireside chat? And she said, I will not talk to you guys unless you have Karen apologize for what she did when she wrote this comment to me. Okay? And she wanted it to be like a formal, via video or something. She basically demanded a specific thing. Now, I'm bringing this, and of course, Karen would never apologize, and she shouldn't. There's no reason why she should do that. So, I'm bringing this up for this reason. In Laci's thing, she's basically saying that she spoke to people on the anti-feminist side and says, look, I'd like to talk to you guys, but this is happening. And so she's essentially she's treating the anti-feminist side as though it is a collective, a group, in which people have to answer for other people's behavior. When we've already talked about it on this very stream, that just because you're against feminism does not mean that you agree with everyone else who doesn't like feminism, because there are MRAs, there are anti-feminists that think that feminism used to be good, but now it jumped the shark. There are feminists that are trying to protect their label. There are traditionalists that don't like it because it interferes with their, sort of sanctimonious, family unit God and country above all thing, like the tradcons. And then there are MGTOW, and there are pickup artists, and there's lots of different kinds of people. And then there are trolls. And then there are genuine misogynists. So you have all of these different kinds of people, all of whom hate feminism for all kinds of reasons, but also many times don't like each other. And Laci is basically saying, can you please do something about this element? But it has nothing to do with you. And
Well, let me just okay, finish.
no, I was just saying that on top of that, it's not reasonable to ask that. It's sort of like what was going on with Gamergate. It's not reasonable to say you need to do something about this over here, otherwise I don't want to talk to you. But I do want to talk to you, but please do something about this. And then when they say, no, I don't have to answer for what they do, because I think that a lot of people who are anti-feminist tend to be individualists as well, and they don't engage in collectivist thinking, then Laci says, well, this is a problem because there's so much hostility coming out of the side of the anti-feminists, but the people who I think I would like to talk to that are probably reasonable are not going to, try to correct the behavior or make a statement about it or whatever. And I don't think they should have to.
You know what I think her first mistake is that she thought that it was that if she talked to anti-feminists, she would get more of that instead of less. I mean, what has happened since she put up these 2 videos, right? Her like-dislike ratio, her comment sections, right, are all much more healthy and robust, right? They're much more positive, right, than when she was not talking to any anti-feminists, right? So essentially she's saying, well, there was a time when I wasn't talking to anti-feminists, and anti-feminists were all really, really mad at me because I kept on talking about them and kept on spewing stuff, and I kept on shoveling manure over the fence of the internet, right? And refusing to even address any of the manure that was shoveled back at me, refusing to address even any of the pearls of wisdom that were shoveled back at me, right? And I had all of this shit shoveled back at me, right? She's completely misconstruing the issue, because I would guess, just like with Anita Sarkeesian, right, 90% of the vitriol she gets because she refuses to address anything that she has said, any criticisms that come from people who have criticized her, anything. She has refused to talk, right? And so people are throwing eggs at her house.
Well, first of all, I'd like, I might go someplace completely different than Brian and Karen, but first I'd like to, let's finish what she actually said she received.
All right, let me go back.
Sympathy, being manipulative and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, at what point do I get to be a human being who is talking about...
real quick, that pisses me off too, that she's basically saying I'm being dehumanized somehow because people are not, I don't know, doing something about what's going on.
Laci, the most at-risk group of people on the internet for bullying, harassment, and threats is 19-year-old boys. Thank you very much. 19-year-old boys are dehumanized.
Yep.
About a real experience that I'm having. It's not my delicate sensibilities or my dogma that have prevented me from engaging. It's that people have threatened to violently hurt me at public appearances, threats against my family, situations where I'm teaching students how to put a condom on properly and I have to be accompanied by a police. And then I watch some of the, more extreme antis go on these tirades against people that I know and seeing how they affect those people, and it's just, there's a lot of toxicity there. I couldn't even answer email from my viewers without having to go through a stream of graphic rape threats. Do you get the picture here? So to the
That's. Do you want me to keep going? Yeah, okay.
Antis who are like, yeah, no shit, we have legitimate points, Laci. Like, what a fucking idiot. Like, we're not gonna give you cookies for this basic stuff. Like, you need to understand how this conversation looks to people like me, to people on the outside of your bubble. Because this is all I saw every day. And no, it's not the whole picture. You know, just like social justice warriors bastardizing feminism, this is what anti-feminism looks like to people like me. And YouTubers are not responsible for like crazy shit that their audience does. Of course not. But I
Okay, all right, let's stop it here. Okay, well, first the points of logic. Were they rape threats, or were they, I hope you get raped? Because that's not a rape threat, it's just passive aggression. The other thing is, when you look at the feminist side versus the anti-feminist side, the feminist side went up to you in a parking lot and literally threatened you right where you were. And as you said, they've also threatened people's jobs, which incidentally was the same reason why a lot of black people didn't join the civil rights movement during the 50s and 60s, because they would lose their job. It wasn't even an issue of being beaten up. It was an issue of losing their job, losing their livelihood, because the whole attitude surrounding segregation at that time was deeply embedded into the system in which you earned a living. So you have to think about it. Think about the relative harm here. Threatening people's living, threatening them physically, versus sending you a nasty email. Yes, the nasty emails, the nasty comments, they are unpleasant. They're difficult to listen to. You have every right to be upset about them. And now I'm going to go somewhere where Karen and Brian maybe don't disagree totally. The fact that you actually are still willing to engage despite having had this amount of negativity directed towards you does speak well of you. I will say that.
Oh, no, I absolutely. And it was maybe a day or two after she uploaded her first video, I went to her channel and I got her email her contact box thing. And I sent her an encouraging message, and I said, and if you ever want to chat, just hit me up. I'm totally cool with that. And I said, bear in mind that I have ripped the shit out of a couple of your videos in the past, right? But I think that this is a good thing you're doing. And I haven't heard anything back. And as far as I know, I'm still blocked on her YouTube channel. So, yeah.
Well, it might also be YouTube shenanigans.
I doubt it, since it was a long comment with no links in it. And YouTube generally only bans very short comments or comments that have links.
I've seen longer comments, but then again, not as long as your comment. So I don't know. It could be. The thing is that the reason why I suggest it might not be an ideological thing is because she did follow Honey Badger Radio, and I think that of the two of us, we're
no. I'm not saying she blocked me the day before yesterday. I'm saying she probably had me blocked and has not unblocked me as yet.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, but what I wanted to say is that kudos, that you're still willing to engage after that. I mean, it does take a certain amount of at least toughness.
No, it does. No, it doesn't. It doesn't, because okay. Well, maybe it does in the mind of someone like Laci Green, who thinks that it is because she's a woman talking about feminism on the internet. That's why she's getting all of this crap.
No, it's just the
right?
subject matter.
No. It's because she refuses to discuss. That's why she gets all of this, right? It is the absolute refusal to engage in any kind of debate or address any kind of counter argument or counter evidence that seems to be like this. When you have a group of people who feel that you, Laci Green, are in a position of authority, right? Of not necessarily authority based on your merits, but authority that has been granted to you by institutional and systemic powers, right? You possess a privileged position in terms of your platform, and you say shit, and then when people criticize you, you ignore their criticism. You do not address it. You will not address it. And we have made multiple freaking videos picking apart every single fucking argument she has made, playing her entire fucking video front to back, right? All of those things. This is what anti-feminists tend to do, right? We don't paraphrase her. We play what she fucking said and address it, right? Has she ever done that with an anti-feminist video? Has she ever done that with a video that criticized her? No, she has not. She has not addressed any of the counter arguments. She has not addressed anything. And she is in this essentially unassailable position. She is the equivalent of an ivory tower princess, right? Who is able to reach an audience of millions with the full cooperation of the system, of the institutions that are in power, right? Who are all backing her message and sponsoring her message, right? And she gets to say what she wants. And when people have an objection to what she says, whether that's a moral objection or a objection based on facts and evidence or facts not in evidence, okay, she has always ignored that. She has never addressed it. So you have this buildup of her being somebody who is essentially the priest or the pope who gets to say shit that affects everybody's lives, right? Affects law, affects policy, affects what kids learn in school, right? And she is unwilling to address any counter argument, any counter evidence, any objection, whether it's based on facts or whether it's based on morality or whether it's based on opinion, right? And she thinks that when suddenly the plebs down here who do not have her platform, who do not have her institutional support, suddenly feel that they have no recourse but to send her nasty fucking messages, right? Because that seems to be the only thing she ever fucking notices.
Well, okay, to be fair.
Right?
She obviously must have noticed.
She is saying that I won't engage with the arguments because this is what I will get. No, this is what you are getting because you have refused consistently to engage in
Karen, I think that she must have engaged the arguments on some level if she would speak to actual anti-feminists. I mean, not publicly.
Yes, recently. Very recently. And what has happened? What has happened since she began to engage with anti-feminists, engage with the arguments, engage with the counter position? Oh, well, her like bar is much more healthy, and people are actually saying, good on you. Anti-feminists are saying, good on you. You know, I support you in this. I think that this is a good thing. I think this is healthy, right?
Yes.
But she's saying that she's misapplying the causality. She's saying, oh, I can't engage with you because this is what I'll get. No, this is what you got for not engaging.
I don't think she's saying I can't engage with you because this is what you'll get, because she's obviously engaging with you. I think it's just a woman thing. She just wants us to talk about the fucking nail.
She wants us to
Yeah,
talk.
It sucks. It sucks. But you got to get past it.
Whatever. Like, and here's the thing, Laci, and I hope you watch this. Here's the thing, right? I have never shied away from an argument. I have never fucking refused to address somebody's criticism. I have never fucking not gone on a fucking a media interview or whatever, right? Even when I knew they were going to write a hit piece, right? Even when I knew they were going to take everything I said out of context, I have always spoken to every single media outlet that has ever approached me, right? Okay, this is what I do, right? I address the arguments. I address the fucking counter position. I address the people who oppose me. I fucking get told to be, to make make me a ham sandwich by Cenk Uygur, right? I get, and I would go on with him in fucking studio if he wanted me again after that. No fucking problem, okay? And you know what? I don't get a whole lot of rape threats. I don't get a whole lot of death threats. I don't get a whole lot of nastiness, even from feminists. And you know why? You know why? Because I'm willing to engage them. And they know it.
Yep. You also don't get invited on to debate with feminists either for the same reason.
Well,
Okay.
I have been invited on once to debate Naomi Wolf. And look how that fucking ended. She dropped the F-bomb. She called me a rape apologist. She lost her fucking shit, right? She was so upset. They were worried she wasn't going to stay the 3 hours to give her keynote address at the conference because she was so upset by the things that I was saying, right? Which were all factually fucking correct, right? And, you know, yeah. Okay, so there you go. Who's living in a fucking bubble here, Laci? And, you know, maybe what happens is when you actually open yourself up and engage the other side, you get a little bit less of the vitriol. You get arguments, hopefully, right? But you don't get as much vitriol. And, you know, honestly, you getting some fucking anonymous cunt, right, who decides he's going to send you a threat, oh, I'm coming. Here's how I respond to that. You know, as soon as I'm done with Dr. Phil Mason, I'm gonna find out where you live and do everything to you that Phil Mason's fans have threatened to do to Anita Sarkeesian, right? That's what I got in public from a feminist, right? In public, not by email, in a comment thread. And I said, what, like now? Because, like, I haven't vacuumed in a while, and there's dishes in the sink, and I haven't shaved my legs in a couple of weeks. Could we maybe reschedule the rape for next Friday? Because I should probably be ready for company by then. Right? That's how you handle that shit.
Yeah.
You don't fucking take it seriously, because nobody who sends you a fucking email, right, is actually going to come after you. Why would they? They've just announced to, like, the NSA that, you know, oh, here's how you can convict me if I actually do anything. Fuck. Right? And it drives me, like, you are your own fucking worst enemy by saying, oh, I'm so upset by this. Yeah, stop being upset. People will stop doing it.
Okay, so
mock them.
I just wanted to say, no pressure, but we have 1,016 people watching us right now. The stream is bigger than normal. So, shall we continue?
Okay, I just wanted to say.
Okay.
I've been trying to get in here. Yeah, it sucks. Laci, how about we do this? Forget your extremists. Forget the people who did this shit. And let's just talk. Let's talk about the issues. And let's talk about the philosophies. And let's talk about the implications of what we believe. Let's just fucking forget the extremists and just talk about the meat of the matter. Because, and the reason why I would say that, I'll make a pitch for Honey Badger Radio or Karen or Brian or me. We are interested, we're not just interested in anti-feminism, we're interested in equity or equality, but equity. In other words, equal treatment for men and women, or equitable treatment for men and women. So if you believe that your feminism is about equal treatment, equitable treatment for men and women, then you need to start engaging with the things that we're saying. Even if it challenges your belief that feminism throughout the ages has been about equal and equitable treatment. Because what I see happening with feminism now is you have a very authoritarian group that has decided that they define equality, nobody can question them. Sort of like the Ministry of Truth or the Ministry of Plenty or whatever the hell in 1984 gets to define what the word more means. So they can say something like the chocolate ration has increased from 3 ounces to 2 ounces, and because they use the term increased and they get to define what increased means, that means it's increased, even though it's obviously decreased. So when feminism gets to define what equality is, it can say, for example, things like, oh, Sharia law is now equality for women. So don your burqas and slice off your clitorises, ladies, because that's now equality. And nobody can question that the feminist definition of equality. They can define it as anything. Anything. Now, think about that. The feminists who are in power can define equality as anything. Now, currently, they define equality in favor of women, but that doesn't have to be the case for the future. As long as they have these groups of people who agree with whatever they define equality to be, they can do anything. It's like a get out of jail. It's a rewrite the landscape of the political landscape of the West card. And that's what you're giving the feminist establishment when you don't allow criticism of how they've defined equality. You're essentially creating the potential of the most authoritarian system in history, because they can define this word to be whatever they like. And they have a whole huge mass of population of people who will say equality is whatever feminism defines it to be, no matter what that is. An increase in the chocolate rations is whatever the Ministry of Plenty defines it to be, no matter what reality is. And that is really dangerous. Okay.
Let's move on. We're actually going to get through this, I think.
The goal genuinely is dialogue, that people need to be condemning this stuff when they see it, and being thoughtful not to egg it on. Even without the fringier stuff, these angry pylons on YouTube don't exactly say, let's talk. I guess what I'm trying to say here is that I've seen a lot of the same kind of stuff coming from both sides. And both sides see the other doing it, but they don't really want to acknowledge it within their own camp. But I think we can all agree that this kind of shit's uncool, right?
All right, stop. Laci, acknowledge there are assholes in our camp too. Everybody who sends you a rape threat, a genuine rape threat, creepy. Just send that to the police. If it's a passive-aggressive rape wish, ignore it. But yeah, there are shitty people on both sides. Now let's just let it go and start talking turkey. Start talking the meat of the matter.
I do want to say, too, that, honestly, part of the reason why she gets so much more than, again, part of the reason why she gets so much more of this than, say, I do or you do, Alison, is because of how she responds to it. And she responds to it by not engaging in any kind of dialogue, by cutting off dialogue, by sealing herself in further, or this is how she was responding to it. Dog, I will kill you. And
okay.
And then freaking acting
Smack
like she's being victimized. I can't. She's fucking noisy.
Smack your fucking bitch. Okay. There was one threat that I thought was potentially credible. It was bizarre. It was supposedly a quote from Warhammer or something, but it was done in such a creepy manner that it seemed legitimate. And I remember telling the guy, you know what? You better stop, because if you keep going, I'm going to alert the authorities. I don't want to do that because that's going to fuck with your life. And then he stopped. I mean, that's an option too. It's like, guy, you're treading on very dangerous territory here. I'm going to give you a warning, and then the things that you're saying to me. He's basically saying that he could justify putting me out of my misery because I'm a anti-feminist, or I don't believe in feminism, therefore I'm full of internalized misogyny and self-hatred. And I just said, please stop. If you continue, I'm going to report you. That's an alternative too. If it's really serious, that's an alternative. Just tell him, stop doing this, or I'm going to report you. And I don't want to report you because I know how much that will fuck someone's life up. So please stop. And I mean, that's an alternative when you're dealing with something that's really extreme. Everything else can be ignored, safely ignored, unless you feel bitchy that day, in which case, go to town. I've done that too.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the difference, is that when you feel really bitchy one day, right, what do? You engage the person, right, and you turn it around on them, and you end up mocking them, and but you engage in some kind of back and forth with them, right? Whereas with Laci, her entire approach up until recently has been to just ignore it in the individual's case, right? And whine about it. Oh my God, Doug! And whine about it in terms of, look at all this hate I'm getting. Well, when you hold yourself to be untouchable, right? And essentially you don't have to address any of these people, right? They get angrier. They don't go away. They get madder, right? Because you're refusing to address their objections, their concerns, their upset, their anger, right? You're refusing to address that. You are refusing to treat them as human beings, right? Because behind every single nasty comment that you get under one of your videos is a human being who was upset by what you said.
French Honey Badger has sent us a message. No step on snack. And in honor of French Honey Badger's message, I just want to send a shout out to Therapy Snack. You know who you are. You're awesome. Don't forget your Therapy Snack. Okay. Shall we continue? No, wait. I should shell. Okay. You're still trying to get to Melbourne. www.feedthebadger.com. Go and put some money in the hat so we can talk to the Melbournese.
Let's continue with Laci Green's false equivalency statements about harassment on both sides.
It's sociopathic, bit of an overreaction to someone who has a very different opinion, right? This is a big part of why I didn't engage for so long and why I don't think anybody has to either. The reason I originally reached out to the antis in spite of all of this was because I just sort of run out of fucks. Like, I was so depressed, I didn't really care anymore, like I was feeling kind of self-destructive, so burnt out on years of all kinds of craziness. I knew I'd get a bunch of shit for it, but I thought to myself, you know what? I don't really have a choice. It's either this or try to appease everyone. I just gotta do me.
Yeah, that's a good place to be. Just don't just let people have it's more than just saying be me. It's just let people have their opinions. Be like, okay, you have your opinion of me. That's fine. I can live with that.
Zero fucks. Zero fucks to give.
Excellent. Mm-hmm. Good. Yeah. Going in the right direction, Laci.
I think that my experience speaks to some of the darker sides of the extremism and polarization that has blossomed on the internet in the last few years. The extremism in each camp tends to be the loudest, right? And incites the most outrage. It makes people scared or angry or resentful. There's a lot of emotions in these conversations, and I think that's important to listen to. How do people end up all the way in these, fringy factions? That's something I think about a lot. And in my experience, one of the gateways is often some alienation. It's not that they're a bad, rotten person down to the core, that they're just like an evil misogynist or a misandrist or whatever. I mean, sometimes they are, but we shouldn't just assume the worst of people or that they can't change or that we fully understand them based on one of their opinions. Bad time for the camera to die. From where I'm sitting, y'all, good people do toxic shit. Sometimes, across the spectrum, myself included. I believe
Okay. Just pause it. Okay, so the polarization, right? So you have her on her pedestal, right? Her institutional pedestal with her gigantic platform. And you have people who are desperately trying to get her attention to address their concerns with or object to her arguments or whatever, right? And she consistently ignores them, right? For years, right? Just ignores them. Right? And doesn't just ignore them, but vilifies them, because as they get more and more frustrated, they get more and more angry. And then this results in more and more hostile rhetoric and a deeper opposition to everything she says and everything she does, because she refuses to address anything that anybody finds objectionable in what she says. Right? And then she's like talking about alienation. Well, yeah. If there's the Pope who's like sitting on his gilded fucking throne in the freaking Vatican, spewing the truth, right? Without, and it's illegal essentially to criticize or object to that. You're punished for objecting to that. Then yeah. You're going to become more polarized, right? Like, and this is what frustrates me about this entire conversation, is that if she'd just been open to counter arguments and open to like dealing with criticisms and open to all of those things, then maybe, just maybe, there would have been, a lot of this polarization, at least in terms of her, would have been avoided. Right? But like, people can only bash their heads against a fucking brick wall and get nothing in return before they start like taking sledgehammers to the brick wall, before they freaking take their bazookas to the brick wall, before they take their nukes to the brick wall, right? You've made yourself impregnable. You've turned yourself into somebody who is not only untouchable, but anybody who criticizes you is a bad guy, is a horrible person, right? And you shouldn't have to address them because of that, right? And it's like, fuck. And you're like, they're dehumanizing me. No.
No, I don't think that she was okay. Let me just dial back the hyperbole a bit.
You're defending her the way I have defended her a whole bunch of times.
Yeah, I know. I have my reasons. Damn it. What I wanted to say is I don't think that she's saying that they're dehumanizing her. It's more like, can I have feelings as a human being? Not that we're dehumanizing her. And it's like, yeah, you can feel like this is shit and this behavior is shit, because it is shit. But at the same time, it is shit, but you got to move past it. And I think maybe she's starting to see that.
Well, and the behavior is shit, but
it's understandable.
Yeah, it's understandable. It is, and you played a role in that, Laci. You played a role in that because you refused to fucking address any criticism, no matter how politely it was worded. Noel Plum, freaking one of the most even-tempered, even-handed. He gets criticized all the time by aunties for being a fence sitter. He just doesn't describe himself as an anti-feminist, right? And he has criticized your videos. And what's been your response? Silence. Absolute silence.
Let's be fair. Like, she probably gets metric fuck ton of criticism. It's almost impossible to address all of it. Although, you know,
you could
jury
pick
is still
and choose.
out.
You could pick and choose the people who are actually making cogent, rational, reasonable, polite, courteous arguments against your position. There's a whole gamut of people who opposed your position, Laci, right? From the Bearings and the Undoomed and the Ponage channels, right? All the way to the extremely thoughtful people like Noel Plum, right? Who doesn't even disagree with everything you say, but, you know, says that, okay, you get this particular thing wrong, and here's why I think this, and I'm going to take 20 minutes to explain my position on why I think you're wrong about this, right? And you could choose, you could pick, and if you had only fucking just addressed a single fucking reasonable argument against your position, right? You would have gotten some kind of positive response that at least you were engaging in a dialogue. But what you seem to have engaged in is a monologue from on high, and then when people feel increasingly unheard and unaddressed by you and people like you, then you get upset because they're angry. Well, of course they're fucking angry.
French Honey Badger says, I give the money and Snack gets the shout out. That's bullshit. We're trying to have a conversation here. Bullshit. Okay. Sorry. Shout out to French Honey Badger.
Okay.
But not Snack. All right.
Let's continue. We're almost done.
Value in trying to understand someone's intentions, not just their impact. You know, trying to understand the context of their beliefs, who they are, why they feel this way, and hopefully going out on a limb, making good faith gestures between each other to work toward mutual understanding. This is not the same, in my book, as supporting harmful behavior, as supporting people who harass others online, supporting people who harass others in parking lots. If I removed all the context from every time someone did something offensive or treated me poorly.
I gotta ask a question though. What defines supporting people who threaten her in parking lots or online? Because if simply saying I will not apologize for other people's behavior, or simply saying, well, that's got nothing to do with me, that's not supporting that behavior. that's saying I don't want to be held responsible for other people's behavior. I don't think that's the same as supporting it. And I'm not sure if Laci's conflating those things. So essentially, because I've seen this a lot on people that are on the, I guess we'll call it the feminist side or whatever, that basically say, if you don't condemn the behavior of bad actors on your side, of which we've already gone through the fact that there is the opposite of feminism is not a solidified group in the same way that feminism is, like they don't have a dogma or whatever. If you don't condemn that side, then you must be okay with it or you support it. I've seen that a lot. So
it's worse than that. It's worse than that. I did a blog post on Gigi Engel, who does the dirty, sexy monogamy thing, and she did a podcast on the red pill.
His story.
But she actually came out in a blog post on medium.com and said MRAs constantly say that they don't endorse, threats and misogyny and violence, threats of violence and things like that, right? But the least they could do is condemn them, which they don't, right? And
what? I condemn them?
No. Here. I can read you the exact fucking thing she said.
Those things are bad. What else do you want?
Which is fucking hilarious. It's oh god. Let me fucking find it.
Okay. Mark Atheist says, while Karen is finding this thing, guys, what if? Hear me out. Karen made Liana K an apology sandwich. I think maybe a knuckle sandwich. Nope. No advocacy of violence.
That's the worst.
That's the worst. Was it?
Well, just make sure the meat on Liana K's sandwich, if you choose to make it, it has to be kosher.
Kosher meat.
Oh God.
Okay.
Here we go. She said, fuck.
Wow, that's very enlightening.
Oh my god, I'm trying to find it.
Okay, well, while you're trying to find it, let's
the leaders of MRA
they don't
support. I know they don't support. yeah, I know.
Are we like a little alien in the head?
I know. We are one. We are Borg. The leaders of MRA say they don't support these groups of radical trolls. They say they don't consider them part of the MRA group. But if you are a leader who is so weak that you can't even tell your followers to stop using words like rape-tard and feminazi, if you don't have the balls to put out a press release disavowing these so-called followers who regularly accuse women of lying about rape, calling them crazy, violent, and terrible, then you're unfit to lead. So she literally says the leaders of the MRA say they don't support these groups, but then she says they don't say they don't support them.
No, she's going one step further. She's saying we need to control these people who aren't a part of, okay, first of all, what did the leaders, quote unquote, leaders of the MRA, what did they say? They said, these are not part of our group. We do not have any control over them.
Yeah.
Because they're not part of our group. And then she goes on, well, if you're such a weak leader that you can't control people who aren't part of your group, well, fucking, you know what? This isn't even worth. This isn't.
I know, but this
post by the feminism. What's her name?
Gigi Engel.
The feminism Gigi Engel. This post by the feminism Gigi Engel is dumb.
Oh yeah, no, she's like, but she's literally saying, okay, so you constantly disavow these radical trolls, but until you disavow them, you're not fit to lead. And it's like, what? Like she literally said we disavow them and then said we don't disavow them. Because I guess our disavowal is not strong enough because we cannot control autonomous and anonymous individuals on the internet who may or may not be affiliated with our movement.
Yes, I know. It's ridiculous on the surface. It's retarded. It's exactly what you'd expect from the feminism. What's her name again?
Gigi Engel.
The feminism Gigi Engel.
Please don't go harass Gigi Engel.
No, don't go harass her. Not that we have any control over you.
Yeah, you're gonna do whatever you want. Maybe us telling you not to do it has encouraged people to do it out of spite.
Oh, for fuck's sake!
Well,
I
I'm
know.
just saying that's the bind that you're in. This is why this whole like discussion about try to control people on your side and here understand and see what we can do. It's not going to change anything.
Okay, how about this?
It's the double bind of okay, do you leave the link to the original video in the low bar that you're criticizing so that people can go and watch it for yourself and you don't get accused of quote mining, right? Or misrepresenting what the person said? Or do you not leave it in the low bar of your video because you don't want people clicking on that link and going and leaving objectionable comments, right? Which do you do? Because there's no right for doing wrong.
Or do you just tell people, you know what? We don't control the internet. The internet is a vicious beast.
It's a wild, wild beast.
With very many heads, lots of venomous teeth.
And probably Demodex mange.
Yeah, probably. And so, who's this person again? Feminism?
Gigi Engel.
Okay, Feminism Gigi Engels?
Of Dirty Engel of Dirty Sexy Monogamy.
Okay, Feminism Gigi Engels of Dirty Sexy Monogamy. You can't expect...
Not Engels, Engel.
Engel. Okay, whatever. You cannot expect the leaders of the MRA...
Of the MRA.
to be able to control people if they are not even part of the group. Like... This is so stupid. Why are we even talking about this shit? You know what? Laci. Let's go back to Laci. She seems less stupid.
Okay, one...
I was going to say something.
Oh,
all right.
Okay. I just wanted to say, look, but before it disappears, Acro Year 1 gave us $5 and wrote, "Depart head dingo in charge to Oz." That's it.
I have no fucking clue what that means.
It doesn't matter. I read it out loud on the stream. You're welcome.
Okay, well, this has gone like 40 minutes longer than I thought it would. But anyway.
It's almost over.
Yeah, I know it's almost over. I just wanted to say, Laci, we won't blame you for the feminists that cornered you in a parking lot and nearly fucked you up. If you forgive the random internet trolls,
yeah,
that's okay. We won't hold you to be responsible for the feminists who tried to beat you up. If you give us clemency as well. I don't know if that sounded sarcastic.
Nope, it didn't. Okay, moving on.
Poorly, I would have given up on feminism by now, for one thing. But I also,
don't worry, there's still a chance.
Would be giving up on a lot of people, myself included. So I, personally, see the value in listening, even if it's hard, even when it feels unfair. Which, again, is why I don't think anybody has to engage in these conversations, all right? This is just me. I'm speak only for me. I relate.
Ooh, that's individualism. Can't have that.
To lots of different types of alienation that are happening here. And I think that alienation can turn into hostility, and hostility is not healthy or productive for any of us. Social media doesn't fucking help. It's like throwing gasoline on a wildfire. As each new outrageous, ridiculous thing is shared through the echo chambers, more and more context is removed. People get more and more outraged about the other, the less complexly they see each other, and before you know it, we've created these monsters out of these sides instead of like seeing the individual pieces here. So grab the pitchforks, I guess. The first, conversation I think we really need to have here is kind of addressing this undercurrent of, grievances that overshadow the ideological conflicts. My question for you all...
Let it
go. No. The grievances is... I'm just gonna reiterate to Laci. One of the grievances is the unassailability of feminism. The absolute shutting out of any other voices from the discourse on gender and gender equality that you participated in through essentially your silence, right? You watched your dislike bar freaking get darker and darker and darker. You watched your videos get less and less popular. You watched your comment sections become filled with more and more and more hostility from alienated people, right? And eventually you came around and said, okay, maybe this needs to be a conversation and not a monologue, right? But that is not to say, and this is you can say, oh, nobody has to engage in a dialogue. This is just me. Well, no, when feminism is the voice of gender equality in universities, when it's the voice of gender equality in the mainstream media, when it's the voice of gender equality in politics and lobbying, when it's the voice of gender equality in the law, okay, yes, you have a responsibility to engage in a dialogue with people who object to you because you are in a position of privilege.
Granted, this is true. You have espoused a form of equality that has been up to this point unassailable, and you've been defining equality for people and saying that this is the definition of equality, and people are not happy because they don't regard it to be the definition of equality. And I want to say one last thing about the feminism angles. The feminism angles. Yes, well, the feminism angle. How you realize that, okay, if the internet isn't a bunch of venomous beasts, then the internet is a yard full of cats. Now, if you want to know how much control the MRA has over, the leaders of the MRA have over the MRA, go to a yard full of cats and tell them what you want them to do and see how far it gets.
Yeah.
Because that's essentially what you're asking of us. You're asking of us, look at all these fucking cats. They're pissing in my flower bed. Well, they're cats.
Well, and honestly, I suppose if we wanted to be as punitive with our members and as nasty with our members as those 3 people in the parking lot were with Laci, right? If this was how we wanted to run our movement, where any kind of misstep or mistake or whatever was ruthlessly crushed, and with threats of violence.
5 years later, we're gonna fuck you up.
Yeah, we're gonna fuck you up. We're gonna fucking kick the shit out of you, cis scum, right? If we wanted to run our movement that way, then maybe we would be able to exercise that type of control. But that's not how we run our movement. Right?
Yeah, that's very true. Just sort of be accepting and like I said, you just assert your position. A lot of times, people who are motivated by extremely emotional reasons, they tend to react to your position very emotionally, and people calm down over time. They get pissy and then they calm down, and it's okay. It's good. It's all good.
Yeah.
And nobody can be raw 100 days.
Yeah, it takes a lot of energy to be a hater.
Yeah,
like a lot.
A lot. All right, Brian.
Okay.
The ideological conflicts. My question for you all, antis, what have your interactions been like with feminists and feminism? Is there any sort of, key moment that caused you to feel strongly against feminism? Feminists, what's...
Do you guys want to answer that question? Or should I just let this play out?
What's my interaction with feminists? My interaction with feminists tends to be, I make an argument and silence. That's typical.
Heroes never die.
That's probably more than 50%, right? Of actual feminists. And also my interaction with feminists in terms of the things that they say about me is, lies, slander, misrepresentation, demonization, accusations of all kinds of things, including up to and including an accusation that I've been teaching my daughter to suck dick since she was 10 years old, because that's obviously all I think women are good for. So essentially those are, I do occasionally find a feminist with whom I have been able to hold a conversation with. Generally they do a lot of butting, but I agree with but.
Yeah, what's human?
And yeah, I agree. And that's why I'm willing to continue to have those conversations with feminists. But most of the time it's silence or it's hostility.
Oh,
And the silence is actually the worst, right? Because as much as feminists who misrepresent what I say or make accusations about me and try to do mean things to me are annoying, it is the sort of the wall of silence that is the most offensive to me, because they can only have that wall of silence because they sit in a privileged position within the cultural discourse, right? They don't have to address any of my arguments. They don't have to acknowledge my existence because they are a women's studies professor at the University of Calgary who has a platform on our national broadcaster saying MRAs are mostly about men's sexual rights, meaning if only we could if only we could have sex with whoever and whatever we want, whenever we want to, then maybe we wouldn't have to rape you. And that MRAs are relying on gullible, naive Canadians not knowing what we're really saying, and those Canadians need to be told what MRAs are really saying, what is being said, which is not about circumcision, not about fairness in family court, not about fairness in domestic violence law, not about issues of due process and civil rights, not about any of those things. It's really about me wanting to live in a society where my daughter walking home from the bus stop can be like just essentially commandeered by any man who crosses her path to have sex on the side of the fucking road, because, you know, that's what I want society to look like.
Like no society in all of human history.
And to have that woman, that women's studies professor, be able to boldly state that this is our position, this is what we're about, right, on our national broadcaster, and never be asked a single difficult question, never be asked to evidence her assertions, never be asked to apply any kind of reasoning, never be asked to even give anecdotal evidence. Oh, this is what one men's rights activist said to me one time. No, nothing to back it up. Just a platform to fucking vilify, demonize, slander, and libel an entire group of people. And then to chuckle about it and say, oh, well, that's maybe why the MRM is so controversial. Oh, well, that's exactly why it's controversial, right? Yeah, if that's what we're about.
Okay.
Fuck.
All right. Take us out.
All right.
That's my experience with feminists, Laci.
There you
Well,
go.
I'd actually like to have a comment.
No, I didn't know you hadn't had one. I was looking at the chat and stuff while Karen was ranting. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you know, I did. Never mind. I think we've had a pretty nasty experience with feminists, on the whole. Laci. I went to a convention.
Yep.
Bring this up again. Went to a convention. Went to a panel, feminist panel apparently, and said we need to bring men into the conversation because their victimhood needs to be addressed, and also because it challenges the notions that women are defined by victimhood. And then I got kicked out along with Karen and Brian, and we were banned from that convention for 20 years or something, which incidentally was the largest marketplace for creative professionals in the Canadian prairies. So basically sort of ended my career a little bit. There, that's my that's my story.
Yep.
It definitely falls along with the feminists trying to kill your career.
And this isn't like, these aren't, like insane, nutty fringe feminists.
Nope.
This is just the Mary Sue. It's kind of a big website. You may have heard of it.
Yep.
So,
well, allegedly they got us kicked out. We haven't proven that yet.
yeah.
But it's, but the Mary Sue, essentially, even if they weren't responsible for us getting kicked out, they posted articles essentially saying that we're horrible misogynists and we were harassing people at the convention, and that you had harassed people at the panel by daring to ask whether, permission to answer, to field a question, and then answering it calmly and politely. And so essentially by expressing a different opinion.
But here's the thing. Here's the positive thing. I'm not holding Laci responsible for the Mary Sue
No.
or the actions of the feminist at that panel. Laci, I'm absolving you of all potential guilt of getting me evicted from the Calgary Expo. I'm doing it for you. I'm being very gracious and generous when I'm doing this.
You know
Absolving
what?
you.
I think honestly, I don't think Laci has any individual responsibility in terms of that
I was
incident.
being sarcastic.
I know. But I will say that she has contributed by her past actions until this sort of change of heart came along. Past action and inaction, she's contributed to a environment, a cultural environment where those things happen.
Yeah, but you know what? The thing is that that kind of transference of guilt. You know what, Laci? If I can forgive you for getting me kicked out of a convention, I think you can forgive us for sending you a few "I wish you'd get raped" emails.
Yeah, via
I'm-
people that we may or may not know.
Yeah, via people that we have no control of and do not know. All right, I think it's good.
Yeah,
Remember
I mean,
to
there's
get
a
us to Melbourne.
question. There's a question for feminists in here. We may as well play it for the full context.
What's your interaction been like with antis? What do you wish that they understood that you don't feel like some of them are seeing? If you're not a YouTuber, you can hit me up on Twitter. That's where I'm having this conversation outside of YouTube.
I don't know. I would suspect that feminists' biggest problem with their interactions with antis is that there's any that there are antis. You know, like
Oh
I
man.
mean, like the antis exist and that they dare to speak. Like you look at it, the anti-feminist channels, right? 90% of them, I would suggest. You know, there are a few who are not, who don't follow this pattern, but 90% of them, I would say, have open comment sections. Don't delete comments. They don't block people. They don't necessarily answer every comment. You know, I don't answer every critical comment that lands on one of my videos. I generally leave that to the people who watch my videos. They go and they read the comments, and they'll engage those negative comments a lot as well, right? But what gets me is that feminists have consistently not wanted to have a conversation for the longest time, and the reason why is because they're in a position of privilege, and so they have felt like they didn't need to. They've been sort of in the Marie Antoinette position of, oh, the peasants are revolting, you know, they have no bread, well, let them eat cake, right? And so essentially, I think that what most feminists are feeling is, and I put this when I was talking about Rebecca Sullivan at the University of Calgary, that women's studies professor, you know, it's their reaction to some of what's going on is the reaction of Caesar when he sees Caesar is cancer scrawled on the wall of a building in downtown Rome. Right? How dare anybody say something like that? And if they feel any fear whatsoever, it's the fear of, if somebody is daring to write this on the wall of a building, how many people are thinking of it, right? How many people are thinking of it? How many of the plebs are thinking it? And how many are actually, you know, what's going to happen when they actually realize that they can talk about it, and, you know, not only have these ideas, but speak about them and write about them, right? What will that do to my vaunted position as being supreme authority on everything, right? And so it's a completely different fear, I think, than the feminist fear, because feminists that get fired from their jobs don't other than Adria Richards, right? I don't know that there's any feminist who's been fired from her job because of outrage from anti-feminists. They've only been fired from their jobs from within the movement.
Okay, I think I think we should end it.
Well, you have the button. You could press it yourself.
Oh, I could? I mean, at any moment I could press this button?
Sorry.
Yes,
Just a second.
you could press that button.
Except I'm not actually navigated to the place where I have the button, so I gotta do that.
All
Did
right.
you have any,
Well-
did you have any final thoughts, Brian?
No, just try to get us to get us to Australia.
G'day, cobber. G'day, mate.